Only in the Observer. So we have four little
Well, one
four
of them's
little
already gonna
nuggets
pop me.
here. We'll start with the first one, which is Dave writes, I'll be on the nationally syndicated Sports Byline USA radio show
Already?
hosted by Ron Bass on May 12th. He
Damn.
meant Ron Barr, who was the historical host of Sports Byline, but he put Ron Bass, and I was like, the Outlaw and Dave on a radio show. I would pay to listen to that.
The embryonic stages of the Wrestling Observer radio show are right here.
Oh yeah. Morton Downey Jr., who you mentioned earlier. Now this is right up my alley. I am probably a year late on listening to this radio station because this is a Bay Area radio station. Morton Downey Jr. was on local radio station KMEL in the Bay Area this past Wednesday, and a caller called him to complain about how lousy the skit with Piper was at WrestleMania. Downey apologized and said the whole thing was his fault and not Piper's. He did basically expose everything because he said he knew he was getting hit with the fire extinguisher, but I'd do anything for 50 grand. And Hulk Hogan was on the same station on Friday, but I haven't heard from anyone who listened. I'm just like, Dave, it's kind of your job to listen to KMEL if you knew Hogan was going to be on. Like, why are you expecting listeners to tell you? You're supposed to listen. It's your job. You live in the Bay Area where Hogan is going to be on the radio. I don't understand why he didn't listen to this one.
This is curly hair Dave Meltzer era, man.
He was probably at the beach, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be working on that pack and petting his dog. It's no time for this.
So I'll tie this into our love of baseball here. KMEL is the station that former Giants PA announcer Rennell Brooks was a mid-afternoon DJ on. So Rennell Brooks, the first African-American woman PA announcer, she opened up what is now Oracle Park in the year 2000. She finished up last season. There's drama behind why she's not there this year. She was not too happy to not be there. So there's something going on, but they renamed the booth in which the PA announcer does it after her. But where I would have first heard Rennell Brooks was on KMEL. Rennell Brooks Moon is her full name. Her radio name was Rennell Brooks when I was a little kid. So I heard Rennell probably every day of my life for like 2 years as a teenager listening to KMEL.
That's cool.
All right. Now, this is the one that you love. For those into rap music, now let's just start with that half of a sentence. What is the Observer readership like in 1989, and how many of them were into rap music?
0%.
Had to be very close to zero. I was going to say like 2%.
They're more into the Oakster Boys or whoever had that
Oak Ridge Boys, yeah.
Oak Ridge Boys. You know, remember when Jim Ross, in his very carny way of calling John Cena a thug, but he couldn't say it. He was like, Triple H versus John Cena is rap versus tradition. And I popped at that because what he's trying to say is like it's conservative views versus being a thug. That's really what he's saying. And that always popped. It seems so like tone deaf at the time, you know, but it's Jim Ross. We all love Jim Ross, especially because he was, he was having a good time with Missy Hyatt.
I was just going to ask you about that.
But anyways, tell a story about this rap thing. Yeah, it was close to 0%.
For those of you into rap music, several have noted that there's a rap band. This is how out of touch Dave was. Rap band.
Rap band, yes.
Out of Compton, California, called NWA, which stands for a bunch of asterisks with attitudes. And he puts in parentheses. That's what they claim it stands for. Don't send me nasty letters about that.
But that's not what it stands for. It's never stood for that. That's where I popped, because he said the asterisks in the very, very, very insulting way, not the cultural way, where they talk to each other. So that popped me right there. I was done when I saw that.
And so then he says, there's another rap singer now going by the stage name Slick Rick. So he's talking about children's story, Slick Rick, and the great adventures of Slick Rick. Now, Slick Rick, his stage name before Slick Rick was the MC Ricky D. Now, I looked, I couldn't find any origin story of Slick Rick, but I think what Dave is hinting at is that he probably was influenced by NWA World Champion Ric Flair, who went by Slick Rick as the name change. Now, I'm not saying that that's false. I mean, it happens in 1986. It could be related.
Rappers love Rick. We know that.
But also at the same time, anybody whose first name is Rick, I'm sure has been called Slick Rick in their life before, so that could be something. But
it's the bubble, brother. The bubble got to Dave.
So okay, here's so you grew up in LA. Now I'm not saying you grew up near Compton, but the idea that the rappers NWA would like those letters, when you heard it back then, you obviously thought of wrestling, but soon those letters definitely were more memorable as part of the Eazy-E and Dr. Dre and Ice Cube than they were of National Wrestling Alliance.
Yeah, especially because they had a time where the National Wrestling Alliance name was also dying. So it was converting to WCW. So my brain was able to separate both of them, you know?
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, and the where, because I'm at this time I'm like 13, so I wasn't even listening to hardcore rap, but they are one of the first gangster rap groups. I think back then they kind of called it reality rap, but I wasn't hip to them because I was still a teenager. But what actually would hip me to them is Super Bowl 24, Super Bowl 24. The 49ers are playing the Denver Broncos, and one of the safeties on the 49ers, his name is Chet Brooks. I think he had the letters NWA on his wristbands. And so I originally thought, I was like, oh, he's a wrestling fan. But then someone told me, no, he likes this rap group and what those letters stand for in that genre. And I was like, oh, okay, that now I get it. By that time, I would have heard Eazy-E's Boys in the Hood, I think, by that time, which was kind of the blow up single for them, even though it was Eazy-E. He was a part of Boys in the Hood, or a part of NWA back then. But
no, we really can't say that it was 0%, because now that I think about it, somebody had to tell Dave this. So
true.
That's used up. Maybe it was Mike Tenay, because maybe Mike Tenay, is into that stuff. But yeah, it was. Did I ever tell you the Darby Allin story with Dave when MJ called him a school shooter?
No,
I think so. So during a promo, again, this is being in the bubble, Dave. During a promo, MJF told Darby Allin, "You remind me of a school shooter."
Yeah.
And then in the Observer, Dave's like, "Oh yeah, that's because he did wrestle collegiate for a little bit. He did wrestle in high school." And I'm like, Dave, you're such in the bubble, man. Come on,
I wonder. Sometimes he does think that that's like comedy by doing that. I don't know. I'd have to ask him about that one.
Yeah, that was a while back, but yeah, that was funny. That popped me right there, because he's over here thinking he's a shooter, but he's actually like the other shooter, unfortunately.
All right, we have one more, and then we'll get to a couple questions from your KLB group. Saturday night, the only mention of wrestling over the weekend in the Nashville newspaper was a clip in the Monday morning paper on a fight between a group of fans in the parking lot about a half hour after the pay-per-view ended. They were arguing over who was the better wrestler, Ric Flair or Ricky Steamboat. So Dave was a little perturbed that no one covered the actual card, and then the only coverage was of a fight that happened in the parking lot at the wrestling event over who was the better wrestler.
I would say it was Ric Flair, without a doubt, by the way. You know the last time that we saw that, did you go to Miami for WrestleMania?
The one where Bryan Danielson was on the opener, the non-pay-per-view part? No, I was not at that show.
Okay. He was in the pay-per-view part. He lost in 17 seconds. But that was the last time where I saw these fans wanting to fight, literally fight because there was Team Rock and Team Cena.
Oh wow.
And it was like, damn, that was weird. But actually, there would be screaming matches in the stands. I was like, wow, I guess it's still real to them. I guess.
I'm trying to remember the last time I would have seen any sort of because you go to a football game and it's always there. It's not there in basketball. There's not enough of that. It's very rarely is it there in baseball, except if like some of the other team's fans kind of come in and they're a little obnoxious. But yeah, I can't even remember when I would have seen something like that last in wrestling. That's wild.